Unless you're considered vulnerable, and again, we're not entirely sure what the test of vulnerability will mean, but it's probably going to be people who might have registered mental health problems, people who might have learning difficulties. Anybody except those people will have to pay their own rent. Now that obviously leads into, you need to talk to us as the landlord about how you're going to do that. You'll need things like a bank account. We will encourage everyone to try and pay by direct debit. It's by far the most convenient way for the individual to pay, but it's also by far the most convenient and cheapest way for us to handle the payments when they come in. The point at the bottom, the online access, the government are saying that universal credit will be administered online. That means claims made online, and that means if your circumstances change, again, that has to be done online. Now again, that brings in massive implications for the people who've got access to computers and the internet. I know there's our guys at the back, and we're more than happy to talk to people about that. How's it going to affect people in general? Well, the argument in favour, the argument the government will put forward is it's simpler. The second point about tapers, that means when people are moving into work, that's the amount by which benefit is withdrawn when people start earning wages. They've been made more generous to make it easier for people to move from universal credit into work. And of course, if you are going to move on to online, if you're going to get one monthly payment, that might make it possible to pay bills online or by direct debit, which can mean that you can get savings, you can get cheaper rates, particularly on utility bills. The dark side, one big monthly payment means that budgeting month to month is going to be really, really important. And there's not going to be another payment coming in a fortnight, or at the minute, lots of people on benefits have different benefits paid in different stages. So everything will be in one payment. So managing that payment from month to month is going to be crucial. And of course, if people struggle with that, then they might fall behind with the bills. One thing to watch for on that is that the temptation for the payday loan type scenario raises its head. I know there's information at the back about loan sharks, and again, we try and encourage everyone not to fall into that trap. What are we going to do about it? Well, obviously, it's important to our customers, so it's important to us. We're going to try and identify tenants who might need help. People who are going to find it a struggle to do the budgeting, and we're going to try and engage with those people, offer support with budgeting, see what we can do, referrals to other agencies, making sure that people can access bank accounts. We also recognise that we're going to have to review how we deal with people in rent arrears, because we're going to be dealing with lots of people on benefits who have to make their own payments, so we need, rather than just helping people claim benefits when we'll get the money then direct. So we're going to have to change our approach. We're going to have to make sure that we identify the people at risk as early as possible, and make sure then that we get the correct referrals in place for doing debt advice, budgeting advice, the whole range of help that people might need. The cuts in housing benefit. The rules, if you haven't seen them before, sometimes people look at them, and I know lots of people I've spoken to have said, well, I'm okay, I won't get affected, but single people and couples are only allowed one bedroom. So a couple in a 2-bed flat of working age would no longer get housing benefit to cover the full rent, because it's 2 bedrooms and a couple's only allowed one. Children's under 16 are expected to share bedrooms. Children under 10, irrespective of gender, boy, girl, are also expected to share. Now, there's been a lot of talk over the last 6 to 12 months about what these rules would mean. Will they be changed? There's been rows between the House of Lords and the House of Commons, but the Act is now passed. These are in. These will be the rules. What it means if you get the cut is that if you're adjudged to have an extra bedroom, so, I don't know, 2 sons, one 12 and one 14, then they're expected to share. So you would lose 14% of your housing benefit because you've got a spare bedroom. If you've got 2 spare bedrooms, you would lose 25% of your housing benefit. Now on our average rents, that's looking like about £20 a week. That's going to be a massive, massive issue for people who are in that situation. And I'll come on to talk about that on the next slide. The other thing to recognise is that you don't get an exception if you've got a separated family and you might have a son or daughter that comes and stays with you at weekends. No exceptions made for that. Foster carers, disabled people. There is an exception for some people on disability living allowance who need an overnight carer, but that's practically the only one. I wanted to do this slide. If I haven't already got a message of doom and gloom across, then this slide will probably do it. Hopefully I can lift spirits a little bit with the slide that comes after it, but I wanted to talk about the numbers. So I think this is really important that we recognise the scale of the changes and how many people it will affect. And as I said, it may not affect you directly if you're not of working age, but it's important to keep stressing that this only applies to tenants on benefits of working age. But if it doesn't affect you, it's bound to affect somebody you know or perhaps a member of your family. A 3-bedroom house with 4 people living in it could easily be underoccupied, because if it's a couple in 1 bedroom, a son and daughter under the age of 10 would be expected to share. If the children are of the same sex, 2 sons or 2 daughters, they're expected to share all the way until they're 16. This is going to affect over 1,500 of our tenants. In many areas, 1 in every 4 of our homes, on many of our estates and neighbourhoods, 1 in 4 of our homes will be underoccupied. If you think about that in the area that you live or in a street that you know every 4th house. The gap to us totally in what rent we'd receive this year and what rent we'd get in housing benefit next year would be just about £900,000. A massive gap. Looking at the individuals, we already know that nearly 3/4 of our tenants who are under-occupying already struggle to pay the rent. So obviously this is just going to make it harder. So we need to get in there as quickly as possible and start giving people the advice and assistance to try and help them. Drilling down a level, the biggest problem we've got is 3-bed and 2-bed accommodation. We've got 993 households in 3-bed homes who were under-occupying and receiving benefits. But last year we only had 44 2-bedroomed houses and maisonettes that came empty. Now the sums there just clearly don't add up. Now we do have more 2-bedroom properties, but we don't tend to put families with children into the high-rise flats, into flats above first floor, or obviously a lot of the 2-bed properties we've got are bungalows. So there's a real pressure on rehousing. Of course, what we don't know is what the tenants who are going to be affected by this actually wish and intend to do. They don't have to move, as long as they can find a way to make up the shortfall, then obviously it's up to each individual person to make the decision that suits them. But what we do want is we want people to be thinking about it now. What we don't want is for people to be surprised by it the first week in April next year when the benefit comes in and it doesn't cover the rent. As I said, if we don't collect that rent, we're losing nearly £1 million a year. So that's £1 million that we can't spend on repairs, on improvements, or on services to tenants. The choices for people who are under-occupying is stay in the property and pay the shortfall, or downsize. But I've talked about the problems of downsizing. I'm looking at my watch and realising that we're struggling, but again, what are we going to do? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to try and run some focus groups where we actually talk to people that are going to be in this situation and say to people, right, this is what's going to happen, these are the options, what do you want to do about it? Please, if you think that you're going to be affected by this, or if you know someone who is, then talk to one of the members of our team that can take your name and get back in touch with you later, or perhaps get in touch with a family member or a friend that you might know might be affected. We're going to be employing somebody specifically to talk to people about their options and moving into smaller properties if that's what they wish. We're going to try and make that process as quick and streamlined as we can. We're obviously going to talk to other housing providers. We're going to see whether people want to take in a lodger, but obviously that has implications on your benefits because it counts as income and another person in the property. We will be reviewing the lettings system through choice-based lettings to make sure that people who are under-occupying and want to move get as much priority as possible, so that if there is a property available, we can try and get people into the right size properties. And we'll obviously be reviewing our own lettings criteria. I did a case study. I'm a bit short for time, so I'm not going to go through it, but it just points out that someone in a 3-bedroom house with 2 dependent daughters and a son who visits would be affected and would lose £11.90 a week. And if that person, Dave in this study, if that person can't find that £11.90 every week, then Dave will have to consider moving if a property is available and if he can get moved into it. There are some other changes which affect a wider range of people. Disability living allowance is going to be replaced with something called personal independence payments. Council tax benefit is going to change massively. Now, councils are still working out how that's going to happen, and it doesn't directly affect us, but because it affects, residents, it is something that we need to keep an eye on. The social fund is going, and that's moving into now, getting money in advance to, obviously that'll be collected back. There will also be a benefit cap of £500 per household per week. Now, looking at those figures, we don't think that many of our tenants will be affected. Normally, the people who are affected because the rent payment, the housing benefit payment is high. But some of our tenants on, particularly large families, might be affected by that. The government's intending to write out to people affected by the cap during the next few weeks. The other big thing that we're doing is we need to understand which of our tenants are going to be in this situation. We call that the tenant profile information. And we'll be conducting a big exercise later on this year where we'll be knocking on everyone's door, checking that we've got the right information about the people in the household, so we know which people might be affected and which people we can help. We're also going to be working in partnerships with lots of other agencies. We're going to make sure that all our frontline staff are trained and able to answer questions, me included, since I'm wearing the t-shirt. And one of the ways that we'll change our focus is we're going to introduce what we're going to call the financial inclusion team, sitting alongside our team that normally deal with people who are struggling to pay the bills. Hopefully, I've got the message across that big changes coming soon and lots of people will need to do something. But please, don't worry about it, come and talk to us about it. We've got lots of people here today that can help, so if you're worried about what I've said might affect you personally, come and talk to us, or if you think another member of your family or a friend or somebody else you might know will be affected, either ask us to contact them or ask them to contact us. Okay, thank you.